So I wanted to talk more about how the boomers ruined America. Literally, the boomer class, the boomer generation has ruined America, literally. Um, Specifically the boomer generation, not even the silent generation. Their parents built an America that was different than what we have now and the way the boomers took over. So they deviated from the early 1900s way of life that the silent generation had built, and they developed this corporate hellscape that we have now that is just focused on industrialization, maximum profits. This is where the origination of the American dream comes from, is the early 1900s, the Romantic era period. The Romantic period is the origination of the American dream, because as families became wealthier through industrial advancements, there was more jobs, they were paying, the economy was booming. Well, the economy was growing up until World War II, and then they had the real big boom. A real massive increase in living standards. Up until World War II, the economy was growing, but not at the pace that America experienced from 1945 to 1960. So this is prime boomer development years. Is the period in America where we had the greatest amount of economic development and increases in American history. So the GDP, the gross domestic product, between 1945 and 1960 doubled. It doubled. If you think about that, comparing that to the modern time, so then that 15-year period from 1945 to 1960, the economy doubled. From 2015 to 2025, the economy grew 16%. So the last 10 years, the economy has grown 16%. In comparison, and this has been the last 10 years have been economic growth. Most people's pensions and retirement accounts are bigger now than they were in 2015, and we've only seen a growth of 16%. Think about that. The boomer generation grew up from 1945 to 1960. They saw an economic GDP growth of 100%. And so the economy was just all-time highs, firing at levels that were unimaginable. There was so much opportunity for anybody. And college was free. College was free. State colleges were free. 4-year colleges, Berkeley, was free. They paid only for their books, their room and board, their materials, the courses. They were free. So all you had to do was just decide to show up, and you got in for free. You didn't have to pay anything. Can you imagine? This is what they took from us. This is what they took from us. Can you imagine today being able to walk into California, Berkeley, and being able to take a course full-time for free, being able to take any class you want for free? All you had to do is pay for your books and your materials, and that was it. Can you even imagine what that would be like? No, you can't. You can't imagine. That's what they took from us. That was our country 50 years ago, 60 years ago. And this is what we have now. And it's because of the boomer class. The boomer generation grew up. Their parents built the American dream for them. and they took it and they pulled the ladder up behind them, and they said, everyone else, screw off. The way that we got successful, we're going to remove as an option. It's no longer going to be available. College is going to cost insane amounts of money, and so instead of being free for all and anyone can go during the boomers' teenage years, now it's only if you can pay for it. So they took what was given to every American, and they privatized it, and they made it to where you can only have access if you can afford it. This is the country we have now. You only have access to whatever it is to try to improve your life, whether it be loans at the bank, or educational advancements, or networking, social clubs. You can only have access if you can afford it. Okay? The boomer generation, this shit was free. They had clubs where they went to, and there wasn't membership dues, annual memberships. They had free college that they could go to and organize and socialize and better themselves. And they took it all away from us. They took it all away from us. And we have to know this. We have to know that it was not always like this. That the silent generation of early 1900s wanted an America that was taken away. They built an America, and they wanted it to be for the generations to come. That this is how America was designed. Is all you had to do was just have the desire and show up, and you could be successful. Now you can only, it doesn't matter how much desire you have, it doesn't matter how many days you show up, you only get in if you can pay for it. That's our country, and that's never what America was about, ever. It's been bastardized into a maximum profit, inhumane, capitalist hellhole. This is hell on earth for a lot of people. 1945 to 1960 were the pinnacle of American growth in the economy. The pinnacle. It was the shining star of capitalism. The boomers grew up in wealth. They did not grow up in poverty, without, like many Americans grow up today. They grew up with, okay? The teenage boomers of the 60s, they were so rich and privileged. They were so rich and privileged growing up because of the economic boom after World War II. They didn't feel the need to rebel. Boomers' rebellion was Woodstock, a concert for a couple of days, like we have in Burning Man now. That was their rebellion, was a concert, okay? Things were very good for boomers. Life was fantastic. So good that it's romanticized today, and we want to go back to the 50s and the 60s because everyone knows it was the best time in America to develop, to build a family, to find a wife, to acquire assets, to build a home, to raise children. They took that from us. They did. And they forget that they grew up better. And they grew up in the America that we should have now, and we don't. And the reason why we don't is they took it. The boomer generation changed everything through this corporatized democracy that we have, where politicians are all bought and paid for. There's very few politicians that are fighting for the average American person. You can just go on X and see. There's very few. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey. We'll see what Mom Dami does in New York. We'll see. We're gonna see. But I bet you that any positive changes or outcomes that come out of New York that benefit the poor person are going to be heavily demonized in the news. So you have to basically just get your news from alternative sources at this point. They took this from us, man. They want to act like, boomers want to act like they grew up and they had to sacrifice and do anything difficult. They didn't. It was a free, cushy, comfortable, easy American dream ride. They were so rich and privileged during their younger years. They were so privileged that the high schools were broken down into you've got like the sociis, the normies, and the fringe, right? What's the fringe? What's the fringe? Poor people. There wasn't very many of them back then, and because they were poor, they were the outsiders. The normal family was doing financially okay. There were the normies, the average Joe. They were doing fine. The fringe, the small portion, was the outsiders. And then you have the sociis, you know, the ones where their parents owned the local business, the high society of the town. But the small percentage of the people were poor. Now it's the average. It's the average. 50%, 60%, 70% live paycheck to paycheck. Okay? That means their children are poor. They go without. They don't have access. They have to delay being able to acquire things that may benefit them or improve their ability to do whatever it is. Boomers grew up, they didn't have to deal with this life that we have to deal with now. And they ruined it. It's because of them that we live like this. 1945 to 1960 is considered the golden age of capitalism. The golden age. Never before and never again will America ever see the type of economic growth that occurred during these 15 years. Car ownership quadrupled from 1945 to 1955. Quadrupled. The economy was booming so well that everyone got to own a car. Everyone got to own a car. And you know why? Because unions were active back then. In 1955, 35% of the workforce was in a union. Now, 9% is in a union. You think that's an accident? No, unions fight for your rights. They protect your health and your safety, and they ensure you have a living wage. And they don't allow companies to exploit and just break and just turn and burn, because they will, and they do now. They do now, but they didn't back then. Boomers didn't have to deal with this shit, but we do. And they seem to be so confused, Pikachu face, as to why everyone's so angry and why things are so bad. Huh? What do you mean, huh? 140 million Americans out of 350. 40%, 35% don't own a car and a home. You know, basic essentials for family creation and for economic success. Basic essentials. Almost 4 in 10 don't have them. This is the best country in the world, without a doubt, but we're losing our strengths, we're losing our sanity, we're losing our comfort, we're losing our and we're gaining a lot of anxiety and discomfort. You know, and so that causes you to look elsewhere in the world and think, well, you know, how are other countries faring these days compared to us? You know, and China is an interesting comparison. In 2024, the estimated home ownership for Chinese citizens was 90%. 90%. In America, it's 65%. So, we are falling behind the other advanced countries in ensuring that our younger generations can hit these minimum plateaus required for family creation, which is what keeps the country alive. No family, the country dies. And China seems to know that a little bit better than America. Chinese politicians seems to be acutely aware of this more than ours. Not only has our job environment situation completely changed in terms of like the economic prosperity of the 60s is long gone. We're at less than a fifth of the economic prosperity that the boomer generation grew up in their prime years, or their early prime years. Less than a fifth. It's really hard to fathom that, how much worse off, how much less economic activity there is now compared to 1960, 1955. So due to a lack of activity, there's a lack of job opportunities. So no activity, no opportunity. Okay. Now you combine that with the fact that we have a massive amount of immigration in this country compared to the 1960s. Okay. From 1945 to 1960, they didn't have the percentage of immigrants in this country that we do now. Okay. They didn't have this percentage of people to have to compete for jobs for that we do now, because of the mass immigration policies of the boomers enacted, and probably obviously some of their parents' generation too went along with it. They enacted all of these immigration policies that fundamentally changed the landscape of the American citizen in terms of genetic makeup. Mass amounts of immigration. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but tens of millions have come into this country since the 1960s. These are all people. These are people that I and you have to compete with a job for. That our parents didn't have to compete with them because they didn't exist in this country. They were in their own. Boomers don't think about this very much. I don't think they even think about it at all, and how destructive just unchecked immigration has been on the average worker's salary and the and opportunity, and the lack of opportunity. How many companies, how many industries have become so accustomed now to only hiring immigrants? How many? Hospitality, hotels, landscape, movers, construction, you name it, dude. These are all good jobs in terms of they can provide a good living wage because they can have there's a skill floor on some of these positions. Construction, roofing, the more skilled you are, the more money you should make. These are jobs that a lot of Americans want, and companies have decided to only hire a certain ethnicity because they'll take less money. So it's come down to just a simple issue of who's the cheapest that I can get, and we have to put a lot of blame. We have to put a lot of blame on these company owners, the companies that, and who are they owned by? They're probably owned by boomers. So boomers grew up without this type of competition. Their college was free. They just showed up to Berkeley and got a bachelor's degree in whatever they wanted to for free, and then went out in an economy that was growing at 100% in 15 years. And the economy was growing at 100%. This is considered the golden age of America during this time. What they got to grow up in and get jobs in and build and buy homes and raise families in was the greatest period of American development in the history of America. And they didn't have any competition from all these extra people in the country. Extra people. Competition drives down wages. It's a simple supply and demand. It's economics 101. I'm not an economics major, and I know this. The more supply you have of workers, the lower the wage can be, because you've got 10 people over here. Let's say you've got 50 people over here for one job. This person over here says, oh, look at all these people that want this one job. We can pay as low as we can get away with, because someone's gonna take it, right? If there was 0 people and this one job, they needed to fill it. Now we got to make this job attractive. No one's applying for it. We got to raise the wage. Well, you got 50 people over here applying for this one job. The wage is never going up. It only goes down. So the suppression of wages has been ongoing for decades. Decades. In just about every industry that you can think of. I mean, I can name them. I just drive around, I go outside and I look and I see who's working. And, you know, it to me looks like companies that employ movers, landscapers, roofers, construction, they specifically seem to target a certain ethnicity to hire. And my spider instincts tell me they do that because that person will work for less, because maybe they're illegal, right? And maybe they're illegal, right? And so they just they just need to get whatever they can get. Maybe they are legal and their whole family moved over here, and there's like a big family, you know, living in a house, and they all work together. They all pool their resources together, so he'll work for less. He or she can work for less. Americans, the boomer class has backed every other subsequent generation into a corner through their reckless and callous and completely inhumane methods for developing this corporate environment that we have now. You can make money and you can still care about people, okay? But they went this narcissistic, sociopathic, greed-focused, self-righteous route where the ego of these CEOs and these executives is off the chain. It's unreal, and they no longer have the ability to pretend to be like an empathetic human. They have no, it's gone. Their God is money, and they have no friends, and they will stab you in the back if it means getting a raise. And this is the environment. They want this to be the culture of America. You stab your neighbor in the back because you got a promotion, because you're so anxious to get a promotion because your job doesn't pay. Because jobs don't pay because there's too many people and not enough jobs, because they let too many people in the country, and they've developed these businesses. They fire as many people as they can, so companies are always operating at the minimum possible number of employees to maximize the profits, so the stocks go up, so they can only get rich for the 10% of the country that owns 90% of the stocks. This country only works now for 10% of it. The rest of us are drowning. And we're drowning because the golden age was not supposed to end. It started after World War II and it was supposed to continue. But this boomer generation got so greedy and so careless and so sociopathic. You know, they'll walk over the homeless guy on the street. You know, they'll tell him, get a job, you fucking bum, right? This is the mindset. We went from the romantic era of being environmentally conscious and trying to be aware of advancing our technology while maintaining our environment, and we threw the boomers threw all that away. As soon as their parents died, they said, screw all this, we're flipping the table, fuck my kids, fuck their friends, fuck every generation past me. This is gonna be the way we do things. If you don't like it, get out, go get another job. It's so different now than how it was for the boomer generation during their prime years. It's so different, and they're responsible. They changed everything. They could have continued down the path of enlightenment, right? Where you become more advanced, you become more effective, efficient, more productive, but you also have a conservative mindset, and you maintain your environment, and you plant a tree for the next generation to use as shade when you're gone. That's the social contract. They took all that, they took that and they shit on it. They wrapped it up and they threw it in the garbage. And this is what we live in now. This is our country, and this is why everyone's pissed off. That's why I'm pissed off. Because we don't have the country that we should have. Only 60 years ago. And it's because of this one generation, this one cohort. There's so many of them. They changed everything. The living standard of boomers was incredibly advanced. Multiple cars in a driveway. Everyone had homes. 90% of boomers by the age of 30 were married and had a home, owned a home. Now it's like 10, or it's even less than 10. I'm so angry, dude. This is not how the country was supposed to advance past World War II. Unions were destroyed. And so our wages haven't kept up with inflation, and they haven't kept up with just the cost increases. Inflation is natural. It's always going to be a thing when you have fiat currency. Always going to be a thing. So it's supposed to be managed over time. That's why the Fed talks about 2% target. It's always going to be there, but they want it to be as low as possible, but it's still increasing. And so the lower it is, then the more stable the economy can adjust to it. So over time wages come up, because over time the cost of everything goes up, the cost of goods goes up, everything just goes up. That's just the way it works with fiat currency. You know, and the boomers had an economy that, because jobs were so plentiful and there was no competition, comparatively, there were so many jobs that everyone who wanted one could find one pretty easily. They didn't have to, and they didn't have to have a resume, and they didn't have to go online and apply on Indeed and get and have to deal with all these HR departments in every company who throws their resume in the garbage. All they had to do was walk into the store and go, "Hey, where's the manager or the owner? I'd like to meet him." And then they introduce themselves and they ask them if they're looking for work, and they got a job right then on the spot. You can't do that now. It doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. They changed it. They took that away from us. They took free college away from us, and they took the ability just to walk into a job and ask for it and get it. They took that away from us, and they had it for themselves. They had an economy during 1945 to 1960 that focused on teenagers, because teenagers had money for the first time. Shit. Because teenagers had money. For the first time, teenagers had money. Because the economy was doing so well that they could go straight out of high school, or even still while in high school, and get a summer job and make tons of money. And that money had a high value. College was free. Cars were a couple grand. They could do anything with that money. You could get a summer job in 1955, and that money you made in the summer would pay for all of your materials in college the whole year up until the next summer. You can't do that now. Are you kidding me? You can't go to college now unless your parents are financially able to afford it. That wasn't even a conversation in 1955. Every single 20-year-old boomer, 18-year-old boomer, all they had to do was just go to the school and say, I'm here. I want to get in these classes. Okay, here you go. They took that from us. Can you even imagine what that would be like nowadays? Can you even imagine that America? It sounds phenomenal. It sounds glorious. Like, I want to fight for that. They took that from us. Boomers grew up their whole lives up until 1989. So, you know, you're born in 1955. 1989, what is that? 40, 44, 34 years. 34 years, maybe the first 35 years of your life, no credit scores. All you had to do was just have a job, and you could go get a car, you could go get a house, you could go get a personal loan, you could get a business loan, you could do anything. And then in 1989, they said, nope, no more average poor people are going to be able to have any sort of advantage and help themselves without some sort of like divine intervention, because that's what the credit score did. Now, I have a good credit score, but because it doesn't mean anything, you know? It doesn't mean anything. You also have to have high income, right? Because everything's so expensive to qualify, because banks have developed the lending structure to be extremely difficult to qualify. You've got a score that you have. In 1955, 1960, you didn't have a score. You weren't a number. You were a person, and you walked into your local bank and you talked to the banker that you probably knew, and you developed a relationship, and through that relationship, you got access to funding that you could use to start a business, to become the next millionaire. You can't do that now. They took that away from us. Services that were funded by the state were removed and privatized. Driver's ed used to be free in high school. Now it's a business that you have to pay for. It seems like the boomers, they're so psychopathic and sociopathic and narcissistic and ego-driven by accumulating money that they looked for every opportunity to ensure that any sort of accessibility would be behind a paywall. Even driving, even learning how to drive as a teenager is now paywalled, and it was free back then. And then they want to gaslight us about socialism and say that we're idiots for demanding social safety nets and services. You know, the fire department is a service. The police department is a service, right? We have services for a reason, because they're necessary to allow to foster a thriving and functional society. Okay, it's not all about maximizing profits. So all of us, we have to find a way to get back to the romantic period type of a culture mindset. I think we are getting to that. We are headed that way. You know, there's don't be embarrassed if you're a tree hugger, don't be embarrassed. If you're an environmentalist, don't be embarrassed. Don't be ashamed. Don't let people bully you because you want to conserve, right? This is what we're supposed to do. This is what it means to be the apex species. If you want to thrive and you want to survive infinitely, you must conserve your environment. You must be conscious of your environment, and you must be a curator of it. This is what it means. It's not just all about focusing on only one activity, which is profit. Because you see what happens when that's the focus? The whole world, the whole country goes to shit. People stop having kids. People can't buy houses. I'm scared about what this country is going to look like a decade from now if things don't start changing. I feel like we need to talk more about the way America was just like 60 years ago. The silent generation, what they were able to build, and then what their children destroyed, and what their children turned it into, and what we have now, and what we have to fight for, and what we have to try to get back to. Because the path that we're on now only leads to destruction, chaos, madness. There's no long-term stability and hope and optimism in this environment. It has to change, and this is the process. You have to get angry first in order to want to solve a problem. Through anger, you will find solution and resolution, right? It is the catalyst that sparks change. Complacency is the friend of the status quo, right? So get angry. That's the first thing that has to happen. And don't be ashamed because you're angry. It's what you're supposed to be. Once you start to realize what one generation of Americans has done to this country, and as a consequence, what you have to suffer through, when you start to realize that, you get very angry, and that's good. Keep that anger, because through that we can bring about change that must take place for the rest of us to take the torch from this greedy, selfish, egocentric cohort that's getting ready to die, right? We have to pick up the pieces, and because we're the greatest country on earth, there's optimism in that. We can do it. But first, we have to recognize the way things used to be, how they got changed, recognize what was changed, and then find ways to change it back, to benefit the person, to benefit people, to not just benefit the owner, not just benefit the one who owns the means of production, to benefit all of the producers involved, because without them, the production would not take place, it would not happen. We are all responsible for the creation of wealth in this country, and a lot of us have been left off the table for the rewards intentionally.